Unit 2, Organization of the Organism. Lesson 1, Cell Structure. Again, objectives are very important, as I always see at the beginning of each video. What are cells? Cells are the basic unit of any living organism. So basically, all living organisms are made of cells. But are all living organisms made of many cells? Actually, no. Some living organisms are unicellular. Uni means one, so it's made of just one cell. Famous examples are bacteria and yeast. But other organisms are made of a lot of cells, and we call them multicellular, like animals and plants. All cells are coming from pre-existing cells. So you cannot get a cell without a cell division. There must be an original cell and then it divides, giving you another cell. So this is cell division. And this says that all cells must come from cells that were already there, pre-existing cells. Cells usually can be seen under microscopes. And this is the comparison between plant and animal cells. As you can see, both have cell membranes, both have nuclei and the nucleolus inside, both have smooth endoplasmic reticulum and rough endoplasmic reticulum, both have ribosomes, both have vacuoles, but as we will learn later, the vacuole of the plant cell is bigger and contains more particles, while inside the animal cell we have vesicles. Both have mitochondria, both have Golgi apparatus, but there are some structures that are specific for plant cell and some structures that are specific for animal cell. Here you can see the chloroplast, it's specific for plant cell. The cell wall, specific for plant cell. And here you can see the centrioles, specific for animal cell, lysosomes, mostly for animal cell, and centrosomes. All the labels are important for just labeling, but the ones that we will take in details are the ones that you need to know and understand about. Let's take a look first. How do we see cells? As we agreed before, most of the cells can be seen under microscope only. So we have two types of microscopes. The light microscope you see here in the picture and the electron microscope, and this is a sample of the electron microscope here in this picture. So what's the difference between light and electric microscopes? Let's take a look first at the light microscope here. The light microscope is the one that you can see in your school. It's everywhere. It has mainly eyepiece lens, and this is where you put your eye to see. Objective lens, it's the lens that's directed to the specimen or the slide you're gonna see. The stage, this is where you put your slide. Diaphragm and base, these are basically pieces that are for the microscope to stand and connect pieces together. Here you can see the light source. It's a light microscope. It depends on light, so there must be a light source here that pushes or that sends light through the specimen or through the slide that you want to see. You have the fine and coarse adjustment knobs. These are to adjust the placement of your slide so you can see it better. And you can see the stage clip. The stage clip here is to help you put your slide and make sure it stays in its position. Finally, the arm of the microscope also connects the microscope pieces together, and you can carry your microscope from this part. The lenses of the light microscope can make you see the image 1,500 times bigger than its original size. And this is what we call magnification and focus. Also, the image taken by the light microscope is called the photograph. If you think 1,500 is a big magnification, actually you need to look at the electron microscope, which magnifies the image up to 500,000 times. Can you see? this is the same organism while you're looking at it with the light microscope, and here while you're looking at it with the electron microscope. Can you see the difference? So let's take a look at the cell structures, or the subcellular structures, or the cell organelles. The first organelle that we're going to discuss is the cell membrane. The cell membrane is actually the very thin fat and protein layer that surrounds the cell. And since it surrounds the cell, it has to judge what goes in and out of the cell. It's like the fence of the cell. It's like the guard that protects the cell. So it has to be partially permeable. Partially means not totally. Some things can pass and some things cannot pass through the cell membrane. It is found in both plant and animal cells, because some of you get confused since it's not well seen in the plant cell due to the presence of the cell wall. So you think that it's only in animal cell. Actually, no. Cell membranes are in both types of cells, plant and animal cells. Also, it can be seen by the light microscope because simply it's the border of the cell. So when you see the cell stopping, this is the border of the cell. This is the cell membrane. What's the function of the cell membrane? It surrounds the cell content, controls what goes in and out, as we said before. Also, it holds our cell together. And now to the next structure, which is the cell wall. It's found only in the plant cells. It's made of cellulose. As you see here, it's made of a crisscross shape. Crisscross means that the fibers are against each other, as you see here in the picture. It's fully permeable. It allows anything to pass through it. And also it can be seen by the light microscope, as you can see here. This is how you can see the cell wall under the light microscope. It protects and supports the cell because of the cell wall in the plant cells. This is why you can see the plant standing upright, because they don't have any skeletons or bones to help them stand upright. So what helps them stand upright is their cell walls and other structure that we will talk about later. Also, it prevents the bursting of the cell, because especially plant cells, they tend to take in a lot of water. Why? To help in photosynthesis. But what prevents them from bursting? It's that they have a rigid wall to protect them and to stop this bursting. Also, it gives the cell its shape. You can see here the cells have a definite shape. Why? Because they have a solid cell wall. What else are we going to talk about? It's the nucleus, the big boss of the cell. It is found also in both plant and animal cells, and it contains all of the genetic information. Our genes make our DNA, and the DNA condenses into chromosomes. You can easily see the nucleus under the light microscope. Here in this picture, can you see those dots? Those dots are the nuclei of the cells. Okay, so what's the function of the nucleus? The function of the nucleus is the control. It is the big boss of the cell. It controls all of the cell activities, including cell division. Let's move to another subcellular structure, which is the chloroplast. Again, the chloroplast is specific only to plant cells. It contains a green pigment inside called chlorophyll. So the chlorophyll is the pigment inside the organelle chloroplast, because this is a common misconception. And sometimes a lot of you guys confuse them together in the exam. So please make sure that you understand and remember that the chlorophyll here, it is the pigment inside the chloroplast. The organelle is the chloroplast, while the chlorophyll is the pigment inside. Again, it's found only in plant cells. Why? Because it's responsible for photosynthesis. And since it makes photosynthesis and the product of photosynthesis is starch, that's why you will find some grains of starch inside the chloroplast. But does it store starch? Actually, no. Everything is stored inside the vacuum. It can be seen under the light microscope too. The function is, as we just agreed, to absorb light energy and make food by photosynthesis. We said that the chloroplasts contain chlorophyll, and since they contain chlorophyll, they must contain magnesium. Why? Because magnesium is a vital component of the chlorophyll molecule. So if I ask you, where can you find magnesium inside your cell? Without thinking, you will say the chloroplast. Why? Because magnesium makes chlorophyll, and chlorophyll is found in the chloroplast. And now let's take a look at our storage. The storage here is the vacuole. The vacuole has a bigger size inside the plant cell, and it's central and huge. Why? Because the plant cell, as we agreed before, needs a lot of storage. It needs to store the sugar it made, it needs to store some other particles and water. So that's why it needs a big storage. And what do we call this mixture? We call it the cell sap. What about the animal cell? In the animal cell, we call small vacuoles vesicles. They also can be seen by the light microscope. What's the function of the vacuole? First, it supports the plant cell. But we said that the cell wall supports the cell. Yes, the cell wall gives the rigidity. But also, the vacuole, the filled vacuole, gives the rigidity. Imagine with me an uninflated balloon. How does it look? It's a little bit shrunk, right? But when you fill it with air and or water, it will become rigid and it will be more resistant, right? So that's exactly how the vacuole supports the cell. When it's filled with the cell sap, it makes the cell rigid and strong. Also, it's the storage. It's the storage place for the cell. It stores all the molecules and regulates the absorption of water. Cytoplasm. The cytoplasm, it's mainly made of water, but not only water, other solutes. That's why it's jelly-like. It's not exactly liquidy and fluid like water. No, it's jelly-like. So it can be seen under the light microscope because it's everything outside of the organelles. What does it do? What's the function of the cytoplasm? It has all the metabolic reactions. Chemical reactions take place inside the cytoplasm. Also, it holds and supports the cell organelles because the cell organelles float or stay inside of the cytoplasm. Mitochondria. We talked about the mitochondria earlier when we were discussing cellular respiration, and that's exactly the function of the mitochondria. It's the house of cellular respiration, and accordingly, it's the energy house of the. It takes in oxygen and glucose and uses the glucose to break down its chemical bonds to release energy from those chemical bonds. And it releases also carbon dioxide and water in the process. When we talk about mitochondria, we have to mention aerobic respiration. So whenever you're asked about the function of the mitochondria, you have to mention aerobic respiration and then say whatever you want to say. You can say afterwards release energy from glucose. But first you have to say aerobic respiration. It can only be seen under electron microscope. No light microscope can see mitochondria because it is very small. Next, we are going to talk about ribosomes. Ribosomes are very tiny structures, so accordingly, they will be seen only under electron microscope. They are found in both animal and plant cells. They are the place where proteins are made. Also, they have their instructions for this process, of course, from the DNA. Where do we find the DNA? We find the DNA in the nucleus, of course. Okay, how do they make proteins? They join long chains of amino acids according to a specific sequence. From where do they get the instructions for this sequence? Of course, from our DNA. And this is how they make the proteins. Let's move to another part of this lesson, which is bacteria or bacterial cells. By the way, bacteria is the plural. The singular is bacterium. Bacterium is one bacterium. but bacteria is a lot of bacteria. And they are unicellular organisms, which means that they are made of only one cell. Okay, they have cell walls, but those cell walls are not made of cellulose like plant cells. It's made of another type of structure called the peptidoglycan, not cellulose as I just said. They don't have nuclei, so this makes them called prokaryotic. Prokaryotic means before nucleus, as they were primitive organisms, and they still are primitive organisms, but according to the evolution, they were there before other creatures that have nuclei in their cells. Prokaryotes appeared on Earth millions of years, which means that, again, their sequence in the evolution comes before creatures that have nuclei. Also, this is the structures of the bacterial cell. So, can you please study each one of them? It's very important for you to know how to label a bacterial cell. So, a plasmid. This is the ring of DNA. It has again, any DNA has the codes. And every code means a function that this cell can do. The DNA loop. Also, it carries the genetic information. Cell wall strengthens the bacterial cell and provides it with support like any cell wall. Ribosomes, what do? Yes, ribosomes, they do proteins. They take the genetic code and create proteins accordingly. A flagellum, this is a tail that helps the bacterial cell swim or move from one place to another. As we said, movement is a characteristic of living organisms. Don't forget that. The cell membrane, like any cell membrane, controls what goes in and out of this cell. In this case, it's the bacterial cell. The cytoplasm, which is again the jelly-like structure where chemical reactions occur and holds all of the cell organelles. But as you already, the bacterial cell is much simpler than the eukaryotic cell or from the plant and animal cells because it is a prokaryotic cell. Okay, levels of organization. So, the arrangement of the structures of the multicellular organisms goes as the following. First, we have the cell. What's the cell? It is the basic unit of function and structure of living organisms. Do we have only one type of cell? Actually, no. We have different types of cells. Why? According to the function. Of course, the cells that make your eyes are not similar to the ones that make your skin. They have different functions and accordingly they are different types. And many cells of the same type make a tissue. So a tissue is a layer of cells or a group of similar cells that perform the same function and of the same type, of course. Organ, the organ is made of many tissues put together. The tissues are of similar cells, but the organs are made of different tissues. But they all gather together to perform a specific function, such as the stomach. The stomach has the muscle cells and has the glands and has the lining cells. So the stomach is made of many tissues that are put together to create a specific or to do a specific function. And then the organ system. The organ system, it's a group of different organs that work together to carry out a bigger job, like the digestion, the whole digestion process. It's carried out by different organs, but all those organs serve the same purpose, which is the digestion. And then finally, when you have different organ systems, now you have a multicellular organism. So, as we said before, that different cells are adapted to their specific roles or functions. So as you see here, these are different specialized cells. So those structures inside the cells, they help them do their different functions efficiently. So for example, you have the root hair cell, the palisade cell, the sperm and egg cells, the red blood cells, neurons or nerve cells, and finally ciliated cells. Let's dig deeper into each one of them and see how they perform their functions. First, the root hair cell. As we see here, it has a projection. Why do you think it does have this finger-like projection? To increase the surface area, because it's found in the tips of the roots of plants. And the roots of plants, as we all know, they are responsible for the absorption of water and nutrients from the soil. So we need a very large surface area to gather as much as we can water and other nutrients from the soil. So that's why it has those finger-like projections. Also, the root hair cells, when they age, unfortunately, they develop a waterproof layer. And if they develop a waterproof layer, they will not be able to carry out their function. So that's why the plant needs to grow usually and always new roots. Then we have the palisade mesophyll cell. Can you see it here? So the palisade mesophyll cells, they are responsible for photosynthesis. So by logic, they have to be the nearest to the source of light. So they are placed at the upper part of the leaf. Why? To be able to carry out photosynthesis. And they are full of chloroplasts. Of course, to carry out their function, which is photosynthesis, they have to contain a large number of the organelle responsible for photosynthesis, which is, of course, the chloroplasts. Now let's take a look at the gametes. But now the animal gametes. We have animal gametes, which are the sperm cell and the egg cell. The sperm cell, they are the male reproductive cell or the male sex cell. That's why they are produced by the testes of the mammals. They are very small in size, much smaller than the egg cell. They have less cytoplasm and they have this part in the tip of their heads, which is the acrosome. Why? Because it contains a specific enzyme that can digest the outer layer of the egg in order to penetrate it for fertilization. Also, they have the flagellum. The flagellum is the tail that helps them swim and help them reach the egg cell. Also, they have a huge number of mitochondria. In order to be able to swim and do this effort to reach the egg cell, they must have mitochondria. Why? Because mitochondria provides with energy. Egg cell, it's produced by the ovaries of the mammals, of course the females. They are much bigger than the sperm cell and they contain a large amount of cytoplasm. Why? Because when the egg gets fertilized, this very teeny tiny organism needs to be nurtured, right? So that's why it has a lot of cytoplasm. It's surrounded by the jelly coat. Why? To protect it. Red blood cells. Red blood cells, of course, they are found in the blood of the mammals. They do not have a nucleus inside to give more space for oxygen, because they are responsible for oxygen and nutrients carrying all around the body. And that's exactly why they have the hemoglobin. The hemoglobin is the chemical structure that's made of iron and protein. It's the only thing that can pick up oxygen from the lungs and release it to all of the other body cells. They are made in the bone marrow. By the way, a red blood cell can only live for 120 days. Where do they get destroyed? They get destroyed in the spleen and the liver. This is their shape. Can you see it? It has a concave part. That's why it's called a biconcave shape. Why? To increase its surface area, to allow more oxygen to combine to the red blood cell. And then we have the neuron or the nerve cell. In the nervous system of animals, of course, it's a neuron, it's a nerve cell, so you can find it in the nervous system. What's the function of the neuron? The function of the neuron is that it conducts electrical impulses along the body from head to toe. So it's mainly made of the spinal cord and the brain, and also every nerve in your body. So those cells must have many endings because they connect many parts together. They connect with other neurons, and also they connect with sense organs, like your eye, for example. Your eye is a sense organ. It sees what's happening and notices any change in the outer environment and delivers the message or the electrical impulses to your brain to translate what it's. Okay, ciliated cells. Before we talk about ciliated cells, you need to know that there is a liquid substance that's called the mucus. What's the function of the mucus? It traps. It's a trap. For what? For any unwanted particles, like dust particles from the air, bacteria, anything that you need to clear your air from before it enters your body. Now, of course, you don't want to keep those foreign things inside your body, or any bacteria that's not wanted inside your body. So you need to send those things outside. This is the function of the ciliated cells. It has projections, tiny hair-like projections. And of course, they are lining all of those air pathways, like the trachea and the bronchi. And then those tiny hair-like projections will start pushing upwards all of those particles outside of our body. And this is how ciliated cells keep our lungs clean, because when they push this mucus outside of the air pathways, they go inside our mouth, and sometimes even if they get swallowed, the stomach has strong acids to kill any bacteria that enters the stomach. And now you need to know that there is a huge hazard of smoking, that it stops or reduces the effect of the ciliated cells. That's why you see smokers always coughing. And also they can easily get any lung infection because they cannot get rid of the mucus that has inside all of the bacteria and unwanted debris trapped inside of their pathways, or inside their air pathways and their lungs. Now let's see some questions. The diagram shows a cell of the leaf of a plant. Which part contains the highest amount of magnesium? It is C. What's C? It's a chloroplast, because chloroplasts have chlorophyll, and chlorophyll, one of the main ingredients of it is magnesium. The diagram shows a leaf and its internal structures. What are the levels of organization of the labeled structure? So, labeled structure 1, what is it? Is it a cell? Of course not. This is the cell. Is it a tissue? No, this is a tissue, a group of similar cells. Is it an organ system? No, it's not an organ system. Okay, so how about the second option? Is it an organ? Yes, it's an organ. And 2, is it a cell? Yes, it's a cell. And 3, is it a tissue? Yes, it's a group of similar tissues. So the answer is B, because the 3 positions or the 3 labels are correct. So please, when you answer such a question, follow the whole row, not just the first part of it. Another question, sunflowers have yellow flowers. Which cell structure is found in sunflowers leaves but not in the petals of the flower? So if the petals are yellow, so they cannot contain chloroplasts, right? But the leaves must be green, so the structure is the chloroplast. Okay, another question. 2 types of cell, one animal and one plant. We examined using a light microscope. Which row shows the correct combination of cellular features that would be observed in the cell? So now we need to know, or we need to remember, which cell organelles can be seen under the light microscope. And again, in those questions, I need you to look at the full row. Do not just look at the first and the second ones and say, yes, I found the answer. So let's look which row is the correct one. And here we go: cytoplasm, nucleus, chloroplast, and membrane. These are the features that can be seen or observed under the light microscope. Let's look at another question. The diagram shows two guard cells. Which label shows the cell wall? When he's asking about the cell wall, without thinking, it's the most outer layer. So in this situation, it is D. Which cell is adapted for absorption? Which one is it? It's the root hair cell. So is it this one or that one? It's D. Why? Because it has a finger-like projection. What are these? These are cilia, hair-like structures. See the difference? It's a huge difference. Please do not get confused in the exam. Figure 1.1 shows an animal cell. Name the features labeled A and B and write the answers on the figure. So A is the cell membrane. Why didn't I say cell wall, though it's the most outer layer? Because this is an animal cell. Animal cells don't have cell walls. And B, of course, is the cytoplasm. The nucleus of living cells contains genetic material. Name the chemical that this genetic material is made from. It's DNA, of course. And now you have the cell in figure 1.1 carries out aerobic respiration. Remember, this term is very important, aerobic respiration. Name one chemical that diffuses into an animal cell and one chemical that diffuses out of the cell during aerobic respiration. So what diffuses in? You can say oxygen or glucose, this or that. And chemical that diffuses out, you can say, of course, carbon dioxide or water. And thank you. I hope this video helps.